First question, Helene St. James, Detroit Free Press.
Steve, what do
Hi,
you,
Helene.
the draft has only just ended for you, but what do you hope you've accomplished here with these 8 picks?
Well, we we hope we've made good choices. We definitely wanted to address some needs, particularly on left D on our prospect pool. We talked last night about the goaltender as well. We feel now we have stabilized our goal in Detroit, and also with a very, very good prospect within our system. We're comfortable with the depth of prospects that we have on left D and on the right side as well. Today we were able to add some forwards, centermen in particular. If you look at our prospects, we have a lot of wingers, what we call skill, we'd consider them skilled wingers. And we wanted to, add to that with some centermen. So we were able to do all of those things.
Following up on with centermen, is Liam Nilsson somebody who could maybe be a bit of a dark horse? He certainly seems to have the confidence in himself. He mentioned that he doesn't ever want to hear a coach say that he's not good enough defensively to play center, that he's really, really driven.
Yeah. Dower Nielsen you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? He was a captain, I think, of the U18 team. We had a chance to watch him down in Dallas at the U18s. Håkan and Thomas Carlson, our Swedish scouts, know him well. Very high character, a good solid two-way, good responsible centerman. So I look forward to meeting him. But I don't know too many players who really like the coach telling them they're not good enough to play here or there. So I would expect that from all of them.
And just real quick, while we have you, free agency, what are your thoughts there? I know you've said you'll probably explore talking to some of your own, kind of what's your approach there? Are there any pressing needs you see a need?
Well, just unsigned, we'll talk to our own free agents for sure. We'll continue to stay in touch with them. What our needs specifically, we trade at the deadline. A couple of left defensemen, so we've got holes on the left side that we look to fill. Forwards up front, we'd like to add. Whether we bring back some of our own players. Our unrestricteds were Darren Helm. Actually, I got all this stuff written down, so I was prepared to answer your questions. But we've got holes up front. We'd like, we've got some flexibility with Vladdy to play in the middle. Even Robbie Fabry, who played a little bit last year, some flexibility to move those players into the middle or back to the wing. Again, right shots are a bit of a concern for us, and our 3 right shot forwards are unrestricted free agents, and we have definite interest in all 3 of them. And between now and Tuesday, we'll decide do we want to try and get something done, or can we get something done with any of those guys, or do we go beyond the 28th and see what else is out there?
You're absolutely welcome to just email your notes.
I'm not sure. Yeah, it's nothing really enlightening, actually. It's just our depth chart, really, and you can figure it out as quickly as I can.
Thanks.
Yep.
Next up, Ted Colfin, Detroit News.
Hey, Steve, given how crazy this whole year was, it seemed like some of these kids, maybe you guys knew just a little bit more, a little extra with Chris maybe coaching them or whatnot. Does that kind of help you choose or go after a player than maybe a guy you're not as familiar with?
Well, you like to know you have as much information on all the kids that you can to make the best decision possible. It doesn't really come down to so much Chris knows this guy or therefore I'm drafting him. We're always looking at who's the best player at that spot, what's the right pick. But it is very helpful when, some of these kids, Chris, growing up as a coach, or with his own son growing up and being in the hockey world, he's gotten to know them very well. So that's very helpful, but really not a determining factor for any of them, but just, again, more information and, know the type of people we're trying to bring in, really solid kids, high character kids. So it is somewhat helpful, but it's not really a deciding factor for us. The fact that we know them, we try to get to know them all.
Right. The Plandowski kids, I don't know, could be another sleeper. I mean, you look at some of those mock drafts, people had them going much further than where you guys got them. What do you know about him? Could be a kid who could be a sleeper. Who knows?
Yeah, well, his father and I worked together in Tampa.
Yeah.
He was one of our head amateur scouts. I met Oscar when he was a little boy. I haven't seen him play. I've seen video of him play, but in discussing or leading up to the pick, he's obviously a right shot, very good skater, good size, very good skater, good shot. So our guys like the size, the skating ability, and he's a right shot D. And we thought, we did pick a couple of lefts, and you look at our depth chart, we've got a lot of left shot D that we're very, very high on, and we got a few righties that we obviously like. So we thought it was at that spot he was there, and we were debating a couple of different players, and we like the fact that he's got good size, he can skate, and he's a right shot.
Sounds good. Appreciate this, Steve. Thanks.
Yep.
Next up, Justin Rose, WXYZ.
Hey, Steve, it looks like you took a couple of monsters on the blue line. I mean, when you have a guy on the board with 6'6", 6'5" size, I mean, how much, what do you weigh between maybe a smaller, faster guy there? I'm just curious the thought process.
Well, ultimately, we're going to take the best player available. All things being equal, and the one guy's bigger, we'll take the bigger guy. All things being equal, one guy's faster, well, we'll take the faster guy. So, it's not so much worrying about big versus small or whatnot. That we like, you met the two defensemen in particular that we take in Edvinsson and Bouillon. Both big guys. We like them a lot. Today, obviously, we trade up to get Shy, excuse me. We had him pretty high, probably higher than most people. And we just felt like, let's get him. We've been in that spot before where we're waiting, and then they go right before you, and not knowing what other teams are doing. We thought the cost to move up to make sure we had him was reasonable. And that, as you saw later on, we made a pick to move back to reacquire that pick. So I do like these big D men, but they have to be mobile. They have to have some skill. We don't draft them just because they're big.
And then secondly, you've been through enough of these drafts. What do you think, it's more gut, or is it the analytical process of it when you're actually making the selection? How do you vary between the two?
Well, we put our list together of not so much gut, but the eye test. You scout there, you're watching them. That's the number one thing. You go and you watch him. Do you like the player? Do you like the way he plays? Do you like the attributes that he has? Do you think he's going to be an NHLer? But we also look at it analytically, and analytics. God, the data that goes into that when we talk about analytics, it's everything from height and weight to what country they're from, points they put up versus other players, and there's a lot that goes into it. And you take all the information and put your list together and decide. But ultimately, again, we put our list together, and you try to follow your list. And to be honest, today, for example, like we had about 4 or 5 more left shot D that we really liked. And it's like, we got to go away from these left shot D where we're not going to have any room anywhere for all these kids to play. So we started to had to look at other things. So it's not really gut. It's more kind of, I guess, common sense or just trying to spread things out a little bit.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Next up, Max Boltman with The Athletic.
Hey, Steve, you talked about some of the centers that you picked. It seems like a lot of, I haven't seen all of them play, but two-way guys, high compete. I think a few of them have been captains at various points, tournaments, teams. Is that a profile you were specifically kind of targeting?
Well, we were looking definitely to add centers for sure. We're trying to all the kids we're looking for, we're trying to have good character. That's important. We want them to be driven. We want good people in the organization. So the fact that they were captains is maybe coincidental. We go with all three of them, actually, similar type players, two-way guys. It's just kind of how our list unfolded this year, and that we're constantly looking at a bunch of left D that we liked when our pick was coming up. And then we got into the middle rounds, and it was some left D and centerman. And, we were comfortable taking these centers. It was a need for us. And, at that point, you're kind of, whether you're picking the 50th or 49th player on your list, particularly when we got a lot of left shot D and we've taken too high, then we could kind of defer to other spots. And some of the wingers that we really liked, they kind of got picked off in between our picks. So, and we knew that was going to happen, where you just kind of, when you see things unfolding, you see it set up, and it's like, this guy isn't going to be there when we're picking here or there. So that's just the way it goes. And we had the centerman, and our choices really were centers and D kind of for some of those middle picks. And we thought it was right. We like these centers to choose them, I guess.
You talked about some of the kind of skill wingers you already have in the system. Raymond and Berggren, do you expect both of them to be at camp this year, and then either Detroit or GR? It's depending on how they do.
I do. Nothing's set in stone. We're planning on for them to be in camp, counting on them to be there, and ultimately where they play, we'll figure it out. Jonathan Berggren, whether he's in, I'm not penciling him into Detroit or Grand Rapids. We'll let it play itself out. And with Lucas as well, we'll bring him here. We'll see how he does in the rookie tournament and in training camp and preseason. And then if he's ready to play for the Red Wings, he will. And if not, we'll decide on Grand Rapids or I'm open to anything. We'll do ultimately what's right for all of these kids. But the plan definitely would be for Jonathan to be here in North America, whether it's in Detroit or in GR.
And then to follow up on free agency, do you have is there a number you have in mind for forwards that you'd be interested? How much room do you have, I guess, to add up front?
How much room for bodies, you mean?
Yeah, is it 2 guys, 3 guys, or I'm sure it depends.
Well, it depends. I guess it depends on what we do with our own players, So we certainly have spots unsigned. Really, if we were to carry 13 forwards, I have, not including our own free agents, we've got to fill 3 spots on our up front, and that includes our own guys. And you know what? The other option is we don't fill those spots, and we see how Jonathan Berggren does. We see how Lucas Raymond does, and any of the other guys for that matter. So, and then on the back end, again, we're looking to potentially add 2D, and whether that's our players that finish the season with us or going to the market remains to be seen.
Last thing, are you guys going to be able to have a development camp this year, or is that out of the question?
Yeah, right now we're not planning on doing a development camp. The timing of it is really it's at an odd spot, and in particular with us, we weren't sure on the border from Canada to the US. A lot of the European kids won't be available for it because they're starting, to go into August for it. They're back with their teams, and we didn't think it made sense to bring them all the way here for 4 or 5 days when they're back skating with their team. And then for our college kids, a lot of them were going back to school, getting ready, whether it's summer classes or in training with their team. So there was too much uncertainty and not knowing with our draft. So we still kick around the idea of maybe doing something, smaller and abbreviated, but as of now, we don't have a plan to have a formal one, and we'll look to do it next year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next up, Ansar Khan, MLive.
Yeah, hi, Steve. As far as just touching a little bit on what Max just talked about, just a prospects tournament, is that a possibility for this fall?
Yeah. Yes, we will be. We will be planning right now to go ahead and making the plans fully to go ahead with a prospect tournament. I'm just kind of standing up here looking at Todd Beam. I'm not sure when that official announcement will come, but our plan, we're in the planning stages. We're expecting to have the development camp at the normal time prior to the start of training camp.
And also just in general, all the picks that you accumulated this year, last couple of years, I mean, it gave you the flexibility to make some moves, to trade up and to make a couple of trades. Just how nice was it just having that flexibility with those extra picks?
Well, honestly, I hate giving up draft picks. I feel every draft pick, regardless of a first round or a seventh round, is hope. It's hope for Henrik Zetterberg or Pavel Datsyuk or Sergei Fedorov or Nicholas Lidstrom or you name it, regardless of the pick. So I hate giving up picks. I love accumulating them and keeping them and using them. And but this year, we were just in a situation, again, we felt it was important. We've had a lot of picks in the past. We still ended up with 8 selections this year, and we did a lot of things with the picks that we had. So it does give you options. But just going back to what we did last week to solidify our goaltending in Detroit for a late third and acquiring Nick Leddy for the late second, we think, I feel strongly that it's important that we try to be competitive, that we bring in some players to help Hronek, to help Sider, to help Dylan, as I'd said the other day. So those cost us picks. We could live with that. And then in this year's draft, he asked me before, do we plan to trade up or back? You have to be prepared for it, but not necessarily plan for it. And when Edvinsson was sitting there at 6, we've obviously felt very highly about Sebastian Kosa and thought there's no chance he's going to be there at when we're picking at 23, that the only way we're going to get him is we're going to have to move up. And that was the price to move up. So again, having the picks allowed us to do that. But again, I don't necessarily like to do it, but you have to, be prepared to make these decisions. And we felt good about it. And, today we sit here and we're glad that we have Nick Leddy on the roster. We're glad that we have Alec Nedeljkovic on the roster. We're very happy to have Kosa in the fold and Buyam in the. I'm sorry, I have trouble. I want to call him Bayam, but it's Buyam. Happy to have those guys here right now, and the cost of that is, we're comfortable paying it or prepared to pay it.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Next up, Bob Duff, Detroit Hockey Now.
Steve, Chris talked a bit about this last night, about some of the challenges with guys who didn't play this year. And you obviously picked Zito with your last choice, who was a guy that didn't play any organized hockey this year. What goes into that process? I mean, it's so unusual to be drafting a guy that didn't play.
Yeah, it was interesting because we're sitting there with our 6th round pick, or even in 5th and 6th. And now we're looking at players that hadn't played, and so we're really deferring to our area scouts at that point in the draft as to who they really like and what our needs are. And I guess you could say it's a bit of a guess, but fortunately we watch, you start watching these kids usually the year before their draft, and they like the qualities that he had, his competitiveness, his size a little bit different than a lot of than the majority of prospects we've drafted. So again, it's I don't want to call it a guess, but you're dealing off a year before, and you're hoping that, hey, maybe we're getting a steal out of this, and every team but certainly players have been drafted who've been out for a whole year with injury, and you haven't seen them play. They get drafted. Just there was a lot more of those guys this year for obvious reasons. So, we hold keep our fingers crossed, hold our breath, and hopefully we get lucky. But the characteristics that he showed us, showed our scouts the previous years, and hopefully they carry forward. And these kids, I'm pretty sure none of them were sitting around playing video games all day. They're skating it to the best they could. They're training the best they could. And the setback of missing a year of hockey, ultimately, if they're good enough, they will overcome that.
Thanks.
Next up, Mike Stone, 97 won the ticket.
Yeah, Stevie, two things. Number one, was there anyone today who you guys picked that you were saying, oh my God, he's still there in a positive way that surprised you?
Let me go back to it. Not really. Everybody was kind of in the range we expected them to be in. So no, it wasn't a case of that. To trade up for Buyam, we knew he was going to be somewhere in that range, and we're sitting there, and again, we thought very highly of him, and felt, we're a little bit worried about the two teams in front of us. We don't know what they're going to do, and just wanted to make sure we got him. So maybe a little surprised that Oscar Plandowski was there that hot or at that pick, but it was kind of somewhere in that range we felt he was in. So no, not really shocked about any of them. There was a few kids that we were hoping might slip down a little bit and to get in the mix, and a lot of them kind of were like, I don't think they'll fall, and ultimately they didn't.
On your pick of Savage, when you're picking a player whose father played in the league, do you talk to his father? Is that Drapes' job? And how much of an asset is that somebody who has at least the bloodlines and knows what to go through?
Yeah, well, Drapes and the amateur scouts would, really with all the kids, they, whether they know the family or not, interview everyone, talk to them, get a feel for them. So, with Red playing out in Plymouth, I know, we saw Brian at the games. I saw Drapes talking to Brian a lot at the games, and I think a lot of it they're just chatting, but it's very helpful that the player, the family, a little bit of the background more, and you get a better feel for the type of character you're bringing into your organization.
Thank you, Steve.
Yep, you're welcome, Stoney.
Our last question, Art Regner, DetroitRedWings.com.
Hi, Steve. Looking at this draft class, out of the 8 players, 2 left-handed shooting defensemen, 3 centers, although 2 of them are listed as left wings as well, 1 right wing, 1 right-handed shooting defenseman, 1 goaltender. I'm kind of curious, besides talent, is there characteristics that all 8 of these players possess? Like, if you could describe this draft class as a whole in 2 or 3 sentences, what would you say?
I guess, Art, I don't know that I would, like, these players are also very different. We again, you hear me repeat myself here a little bit, but we're trying to find good kids, good, solid character kids that have drive and motivation that we like to think all of these kids have from doing the background work, from watching them play. But Edvinson is different than Buyam. Kosa is a goalie. He's different than all of them. Ultimately, we think they're all competitive kids. We think they're all motivated and driven, and time will tell. But they're different type of players. I think with Savage, Dower Nielsen, as centermen, a little bit different players than Pasquale Zito, but all can play center. Mazur's, a very, very competitive, good skating right winger. So we've got a little bit of balance in that with goal. We address kind of every position. But I guess kind of what would be in common, and we're trying to do that every year, is draft kids that are good, solid kids that have different, enough ability in some form or another that we think have a chance to play in the league and are really driven and motivated. And you know what, time will tell if they are driven and motivated. We think they are, but time will tell on all of that.
When you look at this draft, I know you said a couple of days ago that you kind of like the virtual draft because you don't have 15,000 people screaming at you on the first round when you're all in an arena. Did this one seem more like a real draft? Do you think everyone is kind of used to the virtual thing? Because it seemed to be a lot smoother. I mean, last year at this time, I think the third round was just ending, and now the whole draft is pretty much over.
Well, yeah, I definitely liked it in I think it's great, other than today. Last year seemed long. I don't know what time we finished last year, but it's probably just wrapped up. It's about 6:00. what do we start at 11? It's 7 hours, live for what I'm not really sure why, but usually we start at 10 and we're out of there by 2 or 3 o'clock at the latest. So for whatever reason, day 2 seems to really drag on, and that's the only downside to it. But I do like the virtual draft. What I don't really like is the fact that I would like a virtual draft with our entire scouting staff in our room with us. It's a little bit difficult, with the guys in Europe, and some of the guys in Canada all over the place. They're on a, on a call with us on the computers, on their laptops. I'd prefer to have them all in the room. That's the only part that I would like to add to it. But again, just it's just a little less stress, a little less distraction when you can do it from your own office, your own war room, so to speak.
Steve, I know that the 28th is the period for unrestricted free agents, and I know you're busy trying to sign maybe some of your UFAs before the 28th. Yet, by my count, you have 6 prospects playing in the summer showcase. Will you be spending any time in Plymouth this week?
I hope to. Yeah, that's the plan. I know Sean Horkoff, Pat Verbeek left early this afternoon to go over and watch this afternoon. Guys will be there tomorrow. I'm not sure if I'll get over there tomorrow, but yeah, looking forward to getting over and seeing some of the kids. So it's a great event, actually, even when we didn't have our prospects here, and it's nice that it's local, that we get, you can just drive over and watch it. So it's what do we got? 5 or you said 6 kids there, I think.
Yeah, 6. Yep.
Yeah. So, I'll definitely try to get over there at some point, but it looks like we'll be spending some time on the phone this week, not only with our unrestricted free agents, but we got to get to work on our restricted guys as well.
My final question, I promise this is the final one, is that when you were looking at goaltenders between Wallstedt and Kosa, that because Kosa played on a smaller ice surface and had to handle the puck more, that might have put him a little bit above Wallstedt as far as maybe in some teams' books, including the Red Wings, I guess. That's something I never really even thought about, to be honest with you. I mean, is that true? I mean, is that, I know
Art, I never thought about it either, to be honest with you.
Yeah, okay.
The fact that they're on the big ice or the small ice, they're both really good puck handlers. They're both really good prospects. We have our own, you can only pick one. We have our, we made a decision. We had, we did our own work, our own scouting. Like I said, you're making these picks, and there's 5 kids you want in the first round. There's 5 kids you want with your second round pick, and you're sitting there and you can just paralyze yourself because you only get to pick one of them, and they're both very good young goaltenders. And, we have our own reasons that we justified why we liked Sebastian Kosa, or why we opted for Sebastian over Wallstedt. But I think they both have bright futures in the NHL.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Those are all the questions we have for Steve. We'll be back shortly with Chris Draper.